Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. This is your host, the Barkeep, bringing you podcast 76 here at the Tavern, presented by Hirotaku.com. Let's talk about mistakes in Power Rangers Samurai and Power Rangers Super Samurai. When Saban brought Power Rangers Samurai back, what they attempted to do, and what they attempted to do further in Megaforce and Super Megaforce, was try to bring the series back to its roots. But they're not doing that in a good way. What Saban has essentially done in their reclaiming of the series is trying to cherry pick some of the things about the previous series that worked in its golden age and try to transplant that 20 years later into their new shows. One such element that they've cherry picked was the dynamic of Bulk and Skull. And what they did, since they couldn't get Jason Nerval to return as Skull, they decided to give him a son and pair him up with Bulk. And thus, Spike Skullovitch was born. Literally, because we had no idea who this kid was before Samurai aired. So, for whatever reason, they felt that a series of Samurai needed comic relief in it. Okay, you got to have a little bit of levity here and there, but you have characters like Mike, you have me and her cooking, you have Kevin, just his attitude. There's enough comedy to be had within the Samurai series, I think. But for some reason, they felt that they needed to bring the Bulk and Skull duo back. They were able to get Paul back to be Bulk, but for whatever reason, they couldn't get Jason back to play Skull. So instead of abandoning the concept or putting Bulk on his own, they decided to invent the character of Spike. Now, Spike is his father's son, if you want to look at it in that context. What I look at as is Spike being a complete carbon copy of Skull 20 years later, basically. And the whole thing is that they wanted Bulk and Skull back, but with what they did with all the characters' growth through the series and so forth, they couldn't necessarily do that. So they had to invent a new character and give Bulk brain trauma, basically. Because they basically made Bulk dumber in this series and then gave him a miniature sidekick who's just as dumb, if not dumber, than him. So let me kind of bullet point the issues that I have with the Bulk and Skull, and specifically Spike. Because you know what? I like Bulk. I've always liked him. They really did disservice to his character, which I don't believe is Paul's fault. I really think it is the writing of the staff here. Let's briefly talk about Bulk real quick, and then we'll go on to the main issue of Spike. Because the problem with Bulk is, when we last left him, I believe the very last episode he was in Forever Red. 10th season where he was running his own bar. But he's basically the same character that he had always been. A little bit dumb, a little bit klutzy, a little bit greedy and all that. That's the kind of character that we've come to expect. But he had grown since Day of the Dumpster, where he became more responsible, better adjusted to society and life in general. So much that he got his own business. I mean, do you think the Bulk from Day of the Dumpster could have owned his own business? No. The events of the series, in particular, Countdown to Destruction, changed that character. So he's not the same as where we left before. Samurai, on the other hand, turned Bulk into... They kind of reverted him to even before his Day of the Dumpster appearance. They somehow made him dumber for some reason. I mean, let's kind of track what Bulk's... what his storyline is in this season. Basically, Bulk gets in his head that he wants to be a samurai. He goes to Japan, he gets a place to live there, and he somehow coerces Skull's son Spike to come with him to Japan to do this, to learn to be a samurai. All before the Samurai Rangers actually appear on the scene, because he has made this decision even before the Samurai Rangers showed up, basically. Now, the thing is that Bulk, we do know, at least starting in the third season, he decided, he wanted to be a police officer, wanted to save people. And we know in the second season from the ninja encounter that he shows those selfless qualities in him. He's got qualities in him in which he wants to help people. And in the first season, he admired the Power Rangers. And in Crystal of Nightmares, he and Skull wanted to be Power Ranger-esque superheroes. So whether that's for attention or fame or whatever and all that, that's left up to interpretation. But we know from his past that wanting to be a superhero, yeah, I can see him doing that. Wanting to be a samurai, I guess I can go ahead and see that. But the way they portray the character in the samurai season is just somebody who is completely out of touch with reality. And he does these weird workouts and has this weird logic to him as far as what he thinks is going to be successful and helping to prepare him to be a samurai, at which no point he thinks about going to a dojo and learning samurai stuff there, or going to the Samurai Rangers and asking them for help, or, and here's a great idea, contacting one of the previous Power Rangers that he knows to learn some sort of martial art. Because even though, yeah, he knew who the Space Rangers were, I'm sure if you kind of backtrack things a little bit, you can go all the way back to Jason, Trini, Zach, Billy, Kimberly, and of course Tommy. Because it does seem apparent that he knows who Tommy is in Forever Red, that he's a Power Ranger. So instead of doing the logical thing, he packs his bags, goes to Japan, lives in a garage, and recruits a 14-year-old to be his sidekick. Which actually brings me to the first point. Let's talk about Spike now. Let's bring up the first major issue with Spike's character. That he is Skull's son. Now, one can believe that Spike was adopted. Okay, but if we are to believe that, why does he have the same laugh, same mannerisms, almost the same body structure as Skull? I mean, the kid that plays Spike, Felix Ryan, I swear, I mean, they look like twins almost. You could believe that they are father and son. And he gets the Skull characteristics, the laugh and all that down to a T, which is probably why they hired him in the first place. So there's nothing wrong with Ryan's performance. It's just that it's a complete clone of what Skull did originally. But again, back to the son thing. He can't be adopted. He has to be the biological son of Skull. Now, if that is the case, that means that Spike was most likely born during Power Rangers Turbo. So think about that for a second. Skull, who just graduated high school and turned into a monkey, mind you, earlier in the season, somehow between his time searching for a job and all that, and, turned to monkey, being invisible and all that kind of stuff, found a girl, knocked her up, didn't marry her, and then 14 years later, the bastard child goes off to live with his best friend in another country. I'm not criticizing Skull as a parent, but it seems a bit odd that he would do all this with the knowledge that he has a child. Or, worse yet, he doesn't know that he has a child. And when you consider that Skull is rich, or supposedly rich, by the ending scene in Samurai, then that almost makes me think that the mother of Spike found out he was rich and dumped the child on. It was like, well, now you need to start paying child support. That seems to be, I mean, that's the connotation that you get. That's what you think about in this scenario. Let's also point out that if Skull is rich, why isn't he help funding Bulk and doing whatever it is Bulk is doing? Did they have some sort of falling out or something, or what? Because in story, I don't see a reason why Skull couldn't go with him to Japan to do all this. But I digress on that matter. But again, so what we're concluding here is because we never saw any indication, that Skull was ever married, that gives us, Spike is a bastard child of Skull. And then there have been some theories about who the frickin' mother is and all that. One, I do think it's important that we should know who it is, but there are people who are speculating it's Kimberly that is the mother. I have no idea who came up with that theory, but that is the dumbest thing I have heard in a long time. So I'm sorry if I offended anybody out there, but Kimberly and Skull, no, that's... Yeah, he always went after her and stuff, but if we were also to believe that, that means that Kimberly at some point came back from Florida, to Angel Grove and got knocked out by Skull while she was visiting. Get that image in your mind and think about how logical that sounds. Yeah, not really, does it? So, again, we have to kind of throw that theory out. But again, I'm going to believe that Skull knocked some girl up after he graduated high school, hopefully after he was the monkey, and after he was invisible. Oh my goodness, it's Hollow Man all over again. We have to believe that if, again, his age is to believe, which is 14. However, Paul, who plays Bulk, basically said he's 9 years old, and I don't believe that he's 9 either, because, again, I don't believe a 14-year-old or high school student going to Japan to learn to be a samurai. I less believe a 9-year-old at that point, unless Skull is just a deadbeat father, which, again, makes Skull look worse. I mean, no matter how you slice it, Skull looks bad in Samurai. The existence of Spike and what Bulk is up to, and I almost wonder if Bulk has some sort of mental condition that Skull couldn't handle anymore, which is why he just kind of let him go. But even in that case, why does he even send Spike along? And of course, Spike calls him Uncle Bulk, which means either it was the mother is one of Bulk's sisters, which that's an interesting thing. I mean, Bulk has a sister and Skull knocks her up. Wow, that's something. So, although some people believe it's just a term of endearment, I would like to think that it's that, because I'm Uncle Ricky to a little girl in Kentucky right now, but I'm not related to her. But her mother calls me Uncle Ricky. I'm like, okay, I'm Uncle Ricky now. That's fine. I'm okay with that. So, just a number of issues in his existence to begin with. And second of all, again, if he is the biological son, how does he pick up the mannerisms like the laugh and stuff like that? I mean, my father and I, we don't laugh the same way at all. And we look almost completely different, but again, Felix Ryan and Jason Narville, they look exactly the same, almost. I mean, it's really kind of creepy in that context. So there are a number of issues there. I also want to go ahead and bring up something else that a lot of people have said that's kind of parallel. So basically, in those factoids that you find on Ranger Wiki and all these other pages, it's like, Spike, like his father, is in love with the Pink Ranger. In this case, they're referring to Mia, because at least on several occasions we see that Spike has fallen for the Pink Samurai Ranger in her full costume, and we see that later, and I believe it's in the worst episode ever, He Ain't Heavy Metal, He's My Brother, he falls in love with Mia, calling her cute and pretty and stuff like that. First of all, I don't understand how Spike falls in love with a costumed person. I mean, it's not even like he's fallen in love with Power Girl, because at least that costume you see her face and the rest of her figure. But heck, with the way that the Ranger costumes are, you really can't tell anything except that it's a woman, and then the skirt is the only thing that really gives that away. So I find that kind of curious that he would fall for the Pink Ranger, because, the thing is, Skull didn't fall for the Pink Ranger, he fell for Kimberly, which Spike does by the end of the series. Now, my thought was, well, the problem they had with Skull's character in him pursuing Kimberly and Bulk pursuing Trini to a lesser extent was that they never really went out, because the way Mighty Morphin was, they were separating the Power Rangers and Bulk and Skull. That they are two different ends of the spectrum, basically. And that they couldn't intermix. And that's why, like in the second season, Linkara brings up a good point in his history of Power Rangers, how Bulk and Skull could have been allies to the Rangers and helped keep their identity secret. But with the way the writers were going within the series, they really kept them distinct, saying these are the losers, they could never be heroes, never be Power Rangers. Luckily, that kind of changed as we went later into the series in Power Rangers in Space. They became the real heroes, basically. Where am I going with this? Hold on. Give me a second. Yes, so Mia. So my thought was, okay, so he likes Mia, he's fallen in love with Mia, so maybe by the end he and Mia will get together. Because it's been 20 years, pretty much, and things have changed. The nerdy guy can get the hot girl now. You have those, since Mia is essentially Japanese, you have those otaku couples out there. that you can make that work. And by the end they're like, yeah, the nerd finally got the hot chick, the hot chick that can't act, of course. But by the end of the series, nothing happens at all with that relationship. Yeah, it kind of makes me feel that they wanted to do the exact same storylines they had before with Power Rangers, but they didn't want to improve upon them. They didn't want to make them better. Because, again, isn't it a good message saying that, yeah, you can be kind of nerdy, but if your heart's in the right place and you're good, you can get, the woman of your dreams, basically. And again, let's admit that Mia is hot and stuff. And in the real world, I've seen hot-looking girls date dorks like me. I know, because I've been through that a number of times. I can name you off the top of my head 5 girls that should have never been going out with me, but were. I got an ex-girlfriend right now who's a model back home. I mean, geez, things like that happen. That's the point I'm trying to go ahead and make right here. But why didn't that happen in Samurai? Why didn't they give him, and I hate to use this term, happy ending? The ending is him reuniting with his father. Okay? That's great if we had seen them together and established any of their history. It wasn't really stated until the end of the series that Skull was the father. We just know there was a kid named Spike Skullovitch, and heck, he could have been related somehow, but again, it wasn't until the end that we find out that he's the father. So, again, why didn't they do that? Why didn't they hook up Mia and Spike? Heck, they put Emily and Mike together, and that came completely out of left field. I mean, heck, everybody should be hooking up by the end of this series. And I think the other big concern... Here's the other major problem I have with Spike in the series, and Bulk as well. They did nothing. Seriously, if you went and edited their parts out every episode of Samurai and Super Samurai, the plot would be exactly the same. The only time they've ever affected the plot is, again, in the worst episode of Power Rangers ever, He Ain't Heavy Metal, He's My Brother, in which Spike gives the flyer about the charity concert to Mia, and that's when Mia realizes that her brother is doing it for charity and not for self-serving reasons or for the heck of playing music. Which... that is an idiot plot to begin with, so her getting the flyer from Spike really shouldn't have mattered. She just needs to, communicate with her family. That would have helped. But they affected the plot absolutely no way whatsoever. At least in the Mighty Morphin era, when they were cops, things happened to them which involved them and the Rangers. In the second season, them hunting for the Rangers, they got involved in plots. Look at what the Kaleidoscope monster, where they actually saved the Rangers. I mean, Bulk and Skull were not secondary characters in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, or Zia, or Turbo, or In Space. They were integral to the plot in one way or another. They would factor in. And again, if you go back to Mighty Morphin, you can't edit their parts out and be the same episode. You'd be losing a lot. But you can edit Bulk and Spike out completely. Same episode. Nothing has changed. And there are several episodes in which they do not appear. I mean, Spike appears in 31 episodes of Samurai, and there are 40 episodes of Samurai, not including the specials. So, again, what was the point of even having him in there if you were not going to have him interact with the Rangers? Yes, you're giving him some sort of comedy in there, but you could have done that with any of the characters. Heck, look at Antonio, for crying out loud. He's a walking punchline to begin with. I mean, when your casting side says comical like Jim Carrey, nobody's going to take you seriously. And I can't think of anybody that ever took Antonio seriously within the series. So, okay, I think I'm done ranting on this plot, on this whole thing about Spike. What I'm trying to get at is that Spike was... The whole thing with Bulk and Spike should have never happened. It was insulting to fans of the series. It was insulting to new fans of the series because the comedy was not fresh. It was old hat. There was nothing new about it. You have these implications about Bulk and what happened to him since last we saw him. You have these implications about Skull as a deadbeat dad and his bastard child. And you have these implications about the status quo must remain the same for relationships, that only worthy people can date the hot girl, or, people on the same level, that there's no, I mean, it doesn't have to be like Titanic, but you can at least show that somebody dorky like Spike could end up with somebody hot and disciplined like Mia. And again, it's just, that's a story opportunity. You introduced that, but you went nowhere with it. What was the point? I don't get it. So I think I've said my piece. I want to know what everybody else thinks. What did you think of Spike's character? What do you think of having Bulk and Spike in there? Was it worth it? Was it not worth it? And, we see in Megaforce they brought back Ernie. So what are they going to do in Power Rangers Down Charge? Are they going to bring back a Mr. Kaplan lookalike, basically a guy who keeps losing his wig and all that, or Miss Appleby? I mean, I would really like to see them just struggle again, but I would also like them to learn from their mistakes. And I hope they learned from the Spike incident. So, well, that's all I have to go ahead and say. Again, I'm very eager to hear what everybody else has to say about this, so please leave your comments below. Otherwise, I want to thank you guys for listening. Have a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.